Hey, y'all, and welcome to the Upwell Rundown. I'm Katie,
And I'm Rob.
and we are going to talk today about business development and when is the right time to expand your capacity for business development in a growing agency or studio.
Yeah. And I think that we have to start with this idea of biz dev first. Oftentimes, when we think about growth or scaling these businesses as accidental owners and people who come out of the work, a lot of designers, developers, web people, marketers, that kind of stuff, our brain instantly goes to scaling our capacity to do the work because
Mhm.
that's what we know, that's where we're comfortable. And that's usually not the biggest risk. The biggest risk in almost every single agency business that I've been in or that I've consulted with or worked with is finding enough work, making sure there's enough work for the team to do. And I think that if we start flipping our model and our mindset a little bit and start thinking about growing our capacity to find work to be always larger than our capacity to do the work, that's what winning actually is.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's really important to remember that when you make the decision to add capacity in business development, it doesn't instantly translate into more new business. It's going to take a minute. So the planning for it has to be an important part of your thinking. You need to remember that the cycles take a while, the new hire will take a while. You got to leave yourself time to make this successful before you can start implementing the planning to deliver on it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not easy to do that, right? Because a lot of times we don't start thinking about hiring biz dev or don't think it's a need until either we get burned out or there is some other greater need and it's already too late. There's already not enough work.
Mm-hmm.
I think David C. Baker summed this up really well in a recent newsletter where he says, if you can nail new business, everything else can be fixed. Conversely, nothing else really matters unless you have nailed new business. So let's talk about that timing then, when to hire somebody. And I've been in the situation where we've brought on somebody for a biz dev role and it's not worked out. And I've been in a situation where we hired Katie and it worked out really, really well. And those two experiences, we learned a couple lessons. The first was about preparing the business to bring somebody else in, to have those processes figured out, to have good goals, to make sure that we know what we were doing and why we were doing it, other than, well, it's probably time to bring somebody else in. There was intention behind it. And one of the things that we did when we were, still interviewing and figuring out, with Katie if this was going to be a good fit, was we actually worked on goals together. We defined what success looked like and what the business needed from new biz, from the 60, 90, 180 and year mark, so that we could both agree what success looked like and then measure it. And the last thing that we did that I thought was really smart, because of course it was Katie's idea, was we actually wrote a job description together. And that allowed us to actually figure out what the roles and responsibilities for this role were going to be. And we could be really clear. Clarity is kindness. We needed to get there. We needed some shared understanding of what we were going to be embarking upon together.
Yeah. And, just from looking at it from the other side of the table, because I haven't hired for this role, but I've been hired for this role, um, please do it before there's an emergency. If the house is already on fire, there's almost nothing that an individual that you hire or a service that you want to pay for, or a list that you want to subscribe to, any of those things. If the house is on fire, there's almost nothing that can solve it. It's too late. So yes, be clear about what you're looking for, but also leave time for this person to become effective in the role. And that's probably a good place to transition into who to hire for the role as well. I've been told many times that this is a very difficult seat to fill. I definitely recommend that you hire someone that has some experience with business development. It's hard to find people like that, but I think the time you'll save and the things that you'll learn will be worth it if you find someone that has some experience in this space. And I think you have to also look for someone who you can trust. We're going to talk more about this as we move forward, but if you're a founder or a leader or a partner or an owner, it is probably going to be difficult for you to hand over responsibility for representing your company the way you feel it should be done. Um, Chances are to this point, it's always been you. And it's difficult to say, I'm going to let this person step into that space and be the voice. But it is necessary if that person's going to be effective. So I think looking for experience and looking for trust are both really important.
Yeah, and I will absolutely echo what you said. This is the single hardest hire for your agency to get right. That's been the case for so many different people that I've talked to. And this is one of those hires that when you get this hire wrong, you can't possibly see how it will ever work and it'll never be right. It takes finding the right person to make you believe that it's even possible to do this. So don't be discouraged. Don't get frustrated if you've been burned once or twice. You just really haven't found the right person. When you find that right person, you will have this moment where you are like water in the desert. Like, how did I ever live without this human? I can't believe we ran this business successfully without having this person here.
And at just sort of moving forward a little bit, remember that you are probably not going to have that moment on day two. It is going to take some time for this person to learn to tell your stories, to learn to identify your strengths in a seamless way, to learn to be able to effectively convey what you learned from a project that you did 5 years ago, which this person won't have been there for, but he or she or they may have the opportunity over time to be able to represent that work really well. So give it a minute. It is going to take time for that person to learn all of your stories. It's going to take time for you to trust this person, to be able to run with a new project. It can work, but remember that the biz dev cycles are often really long. Sometimes you'll turn something around in a couple of weeks, but it's also not uncommon for it to be a couple of months. So it's going to take a while for someone to have been through this process many times.
Yeah, and they're probably going to do it differently than you did it. And
Yeah.
that's perfectly understandable. The way that we typically do biz dev as founders and owners, because we don't have a sales or biz dev background, is we kind of develop these crutches, these things that we just innately do or don't do because of who we are as entrepreneurs. Your person you're bringing in, they don't have some of those backgrounds. They are not usually experts at the practitioner of doing the work. So they're going to have to do it differently, and they should do it differently. And they should be given the latitude to develop their own style and process. As long as it's still in line with the same goals and getting good work, they need a lot of permission to make it their own.
So one of the things that I definitely have experienced in my career in business development is that when I am hired, it almost always means that there's a transition happening in the owner, leader, partner sort of area of the organization. And often that means somebody wants to step out a little bit, or somebody wants to rethink how they're spending their time, or the capacity just needs to be grown. They're happy to do biz dev, but they need some help with it in order to create this increased capacity. Um, the transition is hard. It's going to be hard for the person that you hire. It's going to be hard for you as an owner or partner or leader as well. So I think just be thoughtful about that. Be honest about what you want to still be doing and what you want this person to be contributing. Let this person respond to that so that they can um, help you create a role that's going to make the best possible use of your time moving
Yeah.
forward.
And just speaking of time here, don't expect that you're going to bring somebody in and your time to do business development is going to go down
Mhm.
A common mistake that I see over and over again is owners thinking they're going to hire somebody for this role and then walk away from it a couple days later. Um, that is not the way it is. Your time with biz dev will go up when you hire somebody for a considerable amount of time until they are fully up to speed and ready to go. And that's the simple nature of trying to work through that process, figure out what works. They can learn the stories. All of those fun things need to happen, but it takes time. Um, and that's not a bad thing because you want to still be a part of designing this process and helpful to make sure it's still going to meet the needs of the business.
Okay, so big finish. A few things that we just want you to take away from this. If there's anything that you stays with you, please be specific about what your needs are. Quantify what you want from this business development person. Be just as realistic about what your involvement is going to be and how much you're still willing to put into it. And just be honest about the change that this is going to mean for you. Make sure that you are prepared for that and ready to support a person coming into what has been your space.
Yeah, and just a final thought here with all of this, especially as it relates to growth and scaling. Um, you really have two different choices. You can either grow the revenue to support the team you have, if you've added a delivery first and added a capacity before biz dev, or you can adjust the team to match your revenue. I can tell you from experience, one is a lot more fun than the other.
And that's it. Upwell Rundown for the day. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, y'all.